Bowes is a small village close to Barnard Castle in County Durham. The place name of Bowes is first attested in a charter of 1148, where it appears as Bogas, the plural of the Old English boga, meaning bow. Not necessarily the weapon, but anything bowed or curved. However, the village has a more ancient origin. It is adjacent to the site of Lavatris, a Roman fort in use from the late 1st century AD to the late 4th century, just one in a chain that was situated along the line of Stainmore Pass, roughly the modern A66. To the west of Bowes in 954, Eric Bloodaxe, the last Viking king of York, was killed. Roger of Wendover records in his The Flores Historiarum of the early 1200s that Eric Bloodaxe was treacherously killed by Earl Maccus in a certain lonely place which is called Stainmore, with his son Heric and his brother Regnold, betrayed by Earl Oswulf. Bowes Castle was built between 1171 and 1187 to replace an earlier earth and timber castle on the northwest corner of the Roman fort, and a planned village was built alongside the castle. Bowes Castle withstood Scottish attack during the Great Revolt of 1173-74, but was successfully looted by rebels in 1322. King John stayed here in 1206 and again in 1212, and the castle was also briefly used as a prison for John's niece Eleanor of Brittany in 1206. There is more about Bowes Castle on my channel, so I need not dwell further on its history here. In more recent times, the artist J.M. Turner visited Bowes in 1831 and made a painting of the ruined castle, whilst in 1838 the ancient unicorn famously played host to Charles Dickens when he toured the local area. It was here in the village of Bowes that he found Bowes Academy, as it was then called, a private school for 200 boys run by William Shaw. It was a no questions asked child dumping ground for unwanted boys. The school was visited by Charles Dickens on February 2nd, 1838, and outraged by its disgraceful conditions, he then exposed the academy and its principal William Shaw as Wackford Squeers in his novel Nicholas Nickleby, creating a public outcry that forced many such schools, including the Bowes Academy, to close down. The academy itself is a large L-plan house of the late 18th century, with a later coach house attached to the left of the front and a service wing attached to the rear. It was later renamed Dotheboys Hall after Dickens' book. It is now subdivided into 7 flats, and yes, is itself reputedly haunted. Of further note, buried in the churchyard of St Giles, the inscription of his headstone reads, "Here lie the remains of George Ashton Taylor, son of John Taylor of Trowbridge, Wiltshire, who died suddenly at Mr William Shaw's academy of this place, 13th of April, 1822, aged 19 years. This apparently inspired Dickens to create the character of Smike in the same novel. Also in the churchyard, and pertinent to the haunting of the ancient unicorn, is the grave of Edward and Emma, as a popular ballad called them, whose apparitions are said to have been seen regularly haunting the hotel. The story from the 18th century is that of Roger Railton and Martha Wrightson, and one that is somewhat like a real-life version of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. The Wrightsons and the Railtons were both publicans in Bowes, and seemingly did not get on. The Wrightsons were at the King's Head, now Prospect House, and the Railtons at the George, now the Unicorn. In 1713, Roger fell in love with Martha, and faced with hostility from their respective families, the pair had to meet in secret. On Shrove Tuesday, 1713, Roger fell ill from a serious fever and begged to see Martha, but the Wrightsons would have none of it. But eventually, the Wrightsons relented and Martha was allowed to visit him. 3 days later he died. Martha died soon afterwards. The curate of Bowes wrote in the parish register, Roger Wrightson Jr. and Martha Railton, both of Bowes, buried in one grave. He died in a fever, and upon hearing his passing bell, she cried out, "My heart is broke," and in a few hours expired, purely through love. March the 15th, 1714, aged about 20 years each. The sad episode was immortalised in a ballad published in 1750 called Edwin and Emma, and also in a poem called Bowes Tragedy of about the same time. Links to both are given in the description if anyone is interested to read them. It is also immortalised in a painting by John Downman shown at the Royal Academy in 1789 and now in the Bowes Museum. But back to the hauntings at the Unicorn. In 2001, the landlady, Linda Burkitt, spoke to the Northern Echo about seeing a teenage girl giggling at the top of the stairs on a cold February night in 1995, which at first she thought was a guest. As she approached to help the presumably lost teenager, she noticed the Victorian clothing, and it dawned on her. At that time, there were no guests staying in the hotel, and then the girl simply vanished into thin air as she watched. Linda commented, "She's harmless really. She's just very naughty and giggles a lot. You know when she's about because the air goes stone cold, and she usually switches the lights off or pulls a plug out and then laughs." Linda gave another interview with the Northern Echo on the 19th of September 2003, where she told the reporter that she often sees what she believes is the phantom of Martha Railton. She has often witnessed other ghosts in the large hotel as well. One is a smiling old gentleman in a natty bowler hat and waistcoat. Another is a rugged farm worker with long white hair and beard, wearing an old-style smock and with his trousers tied below the knees. Guests staying there have complained at times about things going bump in the night. One heard merriment outside his room and opened the door to see a group of comically dressed people dancing down the stairs. Next morning he inquired about the midnight fancy dress party, but was assured nobody had been around at the time. Other things that Linda mentioned were a grandfather chair in the bar that had been seen to begin rocking when nobody was near it. Bedroom furniture has been moved around, and taps and lights are turned on and off. Joanne Foster, another former landlady of the ancient Unicorn, but very much a sceptic, commented on the Go Eat Do website that, from time to time we let paranormal investigators come to stay, and they said that the place is haunted, but I myself haven't seen anything. Joanne continued, "One woman was convinced of the reality of the haunting. She thought she'd seen the ghost of a girl, but it all sounds rather fanciful to me." In addition, she added, "People who stayed with us said they'd been in the cellar and met a little boy who had been thrown down there as a punishment and wasn't allowed back out. So apparently the cellar's haunted by a little boy. This boy is elsewhere described as being around 12 years of age and wearing Victorian-style clothing with a peaked cap. Joanne concluded with, they'd also seen a woman who wore a big grey smock-like Victorian dress. She concluded that she had slept in all the rooms and had never seen anything. Further accounts from the unicorn include one guest who wasn't too impressed about the noise of a late-night party that disturbed him while he was staying at the hotel. But when he entered the room from where the noise was emanating, the sound immediately ceased, and in the middle of the room was a girl in a green party dress, who vanished mere moments later. A dark-haired man has been seen next to a fireplace, and the man in the natty bowler hat has been observed in various parts of the inn. There has also been the report of a strange, shimmering dark cloud seen reflected in the mirror in the dining room. And lastly, some patrons of the inn have reported pranks being played upon them, while others have reported hearing noises and even of being touched.